Elliot stared down at the icy tomb that lay in front of him. The surface gleamed with the cold, unyielding sheen of some otherworldly frost, as if it had never seen a day of sunlight. His breath fogged up the air as he tried to make sense of what was in front of him. This wasn't a normal ice patch. It wasn't some forgotten relic from a crashed starship or the remains of an alien species. No. This was something else entirely. He'd been digging through the ruins of a remote planet for weeks, hoping to find anything valuable enough to pay off his mounting debts and perhaps get a little respect back in his miserable life. But this wasn't in the brochure. Inside the ice, preserved perfectly and utterly motionless, was a figure. A woman, or what looked like a woman. Tall, sleek, with pale skin that shimmered even in the dim light of his worn-out helmet. Her hair, if you could even call it that, was like strands of liquid silver frozen in mid-motion. And the face, it was too beautiful, too perfectly symmetrical, almost too perfect to be real. Elliot blinked and rubbed his eyes. Okay, this is either the best day of my life or I'm about to get eaten by something really pissed off, he muttered to himself. He wasn't exactly trained in intergalactic archaeology, but he'd seen enough weird stuff to know that stumbling upon something this rare, this beautiful, it wasn't normal. Not even for a universe as weird as this one. What truly caught his attention, though, wasn't her beauty, though that was certainly eye-catching. It was what she was doing. Or rather, what she wasn't doing. The alien beauty appeared frozen in an intimate position. Yeah, Elliot wasn't a prude, but the first thing that came to his mind was, seriously? This is how they freeze-dried their women? Her arms were bent at awkward angles as if she'd been caught mid-stretch in some kind of cosmic yoga pose. Only, her fingers were where they shouldn't have been. She wasn't just frozen in time. She had the look of someone who'd been in the middle of a very private moment. And that was something Elliot hadn't expected to find while looking for old tech to pawn off for a few credits. You've got to be kidding me, Elliot said aloud, shaking his head. Was this some kind of intergalactic joke? A prank played by alien races for centuries? He had no idea. His first instinct was to laugh, but that quickly died when he realized how serious the situation might actually be. If this was a real, living being, someone from another world, another dimension, or who the hell knew what, then he had to figure out what the hell to do next. The first thing he needed was answers, and the second thing? A way to get paid. Because there was no way he was letting a discovery like this slip through his fingers. All right, time to get you out of there, hot stuff, he muttered to himself. I don't know what the hell is going on, but you and I are about to make some serious money. He pulled out his tools, digging into the thick, ice-like shell with precision, trying not to damage the delicate beauty trapped within. She might have been frozen, but that didn't mean she wasn't important. If she was some kind of alien artifact or a sentient being in some sort of suspended animation, she could be worth a fortune to the right buyer. Or worse, a pawn in some galactic political game that he had zero desire to play. But for now, his only focus was getting her out without accidentally shattering the ice, or worse, making her wake up in an even more compromising position. It took hours of careful work, chiseling away at the ice, but eventually, the frozen woman was free. And as the last bit of ice fell away, something unexpected happened. She blinked. And then she moved. Elliot stepped back, holding his breath. Her eyes, bright, glowing eyes that seemed to pierce right through him, shifted slowly toward him, and for a moment, there was an eerie silence. Then, without warning, she tilted her head, raised an eyebrow, and said, "You've got some serious nerve, human." Elliot could only stand there, blinking. Wait, what? She flexed her arms and legs like she was shaking off the remnants of being frozen in place for who knew how long. Let me guess, she said, smirking. You're here for the treasure, right? Or maybe to add me to your collection? Take me back to your planet and show me off as some exotic artifact? Elliot opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His brain was too busy scrambling to form a coherent thought. I didn't ask for this, she continued, standing to her full height. Her form was inhumanly gorgeous. And if he was being honest, she had the kind of confidence that made him feel like an idiot standing there in his dirty space suit, holding his tools. "Look, lady," Elliot finally stammered. "I was just trying to make a living here. I find this ice, you pop out looking like some kind of galactic supermodel, and now you're talking to me. Like talking? What the hell is going on?" She gave him a once-over, then snorted. "You really have no idea, do you?" Elliot frowned. No? You're the one who was frozen in ice for who knows how long, lady. You don't exactly have the moral high ground here." She raised her hand, and in an instant, the atmosphere seemed to thicken. The temperature around them dropped another 10 degrees, the ice forming a fine mist that swirled around her like a halo. Her expression turned serious, even a little bored. "Okay, human, here's the deal. I am not your typical frozen princess or some ancient alien relic. I was frozen on purpose. You see, she made an exaggerated air quote gesture, decided to suspend certain activities of mine for the benefit of everyone." Elliot blinked, finally starting to put two and two together. "Wait, so you were doing something really private in there? And you thought, hey, let's freeze this for eternity?" She smirked. "Exactly. I wasn't doing anything, per se. I was stopping. But it's not what you think." She stepped closer, her eyes flashing with an almost mischievous glint. Elliot felt his heart rate spike, unsure whether he was being hit on or threatened. Either way, he wasn't sure which one would be worse. "Well, if you've been frozen for as long as you claim, I've got a lot of questions. First off, you might want to explain why you're so damn smug about all this." "Oh, I'm smug because, darling, the galaxy's problems are just beginning, and you're looking at the one person who can fix everything. Whether you like it or not." Elliot chuckled, though it was more nervous than anything else. "Well, aren't you just the perfect solution to my life's problems?" The alien's eyes twinkled with amusement. "You have no idea. But trust me, human. You're about to get a crash course in just how much trouble you can get into by waking up the wrong person at the wrong time." And just like that, Elliot's hopes for a quiet, boring life went out the window. Now he was stuck with a beautiful, ice-cold alien who might just change the entire course of human history. The only question was, would he survive long enough to figure it out, or would he be her first experiment in getting her cosmic revenge? Elliot was no stranger to strange things, but this was something else entirely. She was stunning, no other way to put it. A frozen alien, long forgotten by whatever civilization she came from, her body encased in an icy prison that seemed to defy all logic. Her alien features were striking, too perfect, too symmetrical. It was the kind of face that made you wonder if your brain was designed to worship it. Her body? A visual feast. Every curve and contour of her alien form screamed exotic, in a way that made Elliot forget, for a second, where he was. But that wasn't what really caught his attention. It was the position she was in. And no, Elliot wasn't some naive, wide-eyed explorer. He knew what he was getting into. He'd seen things in the deep pockets of space that could make a grown man cry. But this was new. The alien was suspended in ice, arms and legs spread out as though she were caught mid-motion. She was frozen in the act of, well, let's just say, intimacy, in a position so intimate, so suggestive, that Elliot could practically hear the cosmos laughing at him. She wasn't just frozen, she was frozen in a way that suggested she'd been, well, in the middle of something, and very much enjoying it. He blinked, rubbing his eyes, thinking maybe the cold was messing with his brain. Did I just find the first intergalactic sex toy? Elliot muttered to himself. He took a hesitant step forward, the icy surface beneath him cracking with each movement, unsure if he was about to discover some forbidden artifact or make the greatest discovery of his life. Either way, this was going to be one hell of a story. He pulled out his data pad and began scanning the ice. No immediate signs of any alien tech or life forms. But then again, this was not exactly a typical alien artifact, no flashy devices or secret compartments. Just ice. And a frozen woman who was very clearly enjoying herself in a way no one would expect from an ancient, cryogenic specimen. All right, he mumbled under his breath. Let's get you out of here, shall we? After some careful prying, Elliot cracked open the ice, using his standard gear to carefully free her from her crystalline prison. As the ice broke apart, the air around him seemed to hum with a strange energy, as though the atmosphere itself was holding its breath. Her body remained stiff, unyielding, like a perfect statue, yet, for some reason, there was an almost eerie anticipation in the air, as though something else was about to happen. Elliot swore he heard a faint hum as he worked, a slight vibration that made his skin tingle. The alien's posture, frozen in a bizarre act, began to shift. No, not shift. Stir. Her eyes snapped open, glowing with an unnatural, almost seductive light that sent a chill down his spine. Wah, what the hell? Elliot recoiled, stumbling back. The woman's lips parted, her voice coming out in a low, musical tone that made Elliot's ears ring. So, you're the one. Her accent was smooth, as if the words themselves were designed to slip past every barrier of language and straight into the most primal corners of his mind. Elliot's heart skipped a beat. Why yeah, I'm the one. And you're the one who's been frozen in some kind of, erotic stasis? He struggled to process the situation. The alien, somehow both confused and amused, let out a soft laugh, a laugh that echoed with a strange reverberation, as though it carried the weight of galaxies. I was waiting, she said slowly. Waiting for you, human. Elliot blinked. Waiting for me? She nodded, her movements languid and slow, still thawing from her long freeze. In my world we trade in strange things. I was sent to this planet, trapped in ice, until a worthy human could release me. Trade? Worthy human? Elliot's mind raced. You mean someone else sent you here? For what, exactly? The alien smiled, a knowing, sultry expression. For you, of course. I have been waiting to be found. To be released. And you, my dear human, are the lucky one. Elliot was too stunned to speak for a moment, his mind doing rapid calculations. He wasn't sure whether this was some kind of alien marketing scheme or some bizarre galactic joke, but everything about this screamed complicated. So, what happens now? Do I get a reward or something? A medal for breaking you out? Elliot stammered. The alien took a step toward him, her gaze predatory yet playful. Your reward depends on you. You see, you are the one who set me free. And I. Before she could finish, Elliot interrupted, his sense of humor finally kicking in. Yeah, I get it. I'm your chosen one for some galactic sex-slave contract or whatever? Classic. The alien tilted her head, still smiling, amused by his cynicism. I do not think you fully understand, human. I am not what you think. Oh, please, Elliot said, taking a step back, raising his hands. You're in a pretty suggestive position for an ancient frozen alien artifact, and I'd like to think I know a little something about intergalactic entanglements. So let me guess, I'll get a free tour of your otherworldly pleasures? Some kind of cosmic booty call? The alien paused for a long, uncomfortable moment, as if weighing her options. Yes, she said finally, her tone turning more serious. But there's more. I was sent to test you. Test me? Elliot echoed. He ran a hand through his messy hair. What, like a final exam? What's the grade for freeing a beautiful alien woman from a weird sex ice trap? Not exactly, she said with a chuckle. You see, human, in my world, those who are worthy of breaking my stasis are given the power to decide the fate of their own kind. Elliot frowned. Wait, what? So I'm supposed to save the world now? She leaned closer, her breath warm despite her icy origins. Not save it. Change it. He froze, his earlier sarcasm fading as reality began to settle in. Change it? How? She reached out, her fingertips grazing his arm, sending a shock of electricity through him. That depends on you. And so, Elliot stood, frozen himself, caught in a moment where the line between humor and danger blurred. What kind of test was this? And more importantly, what kind of ridiculous mess had he just gotten himself into? One thing was certain, this was going to get a lot more complicated, and a hell of a lot more entertaining, than he had ever imagined. Elliot rubbed his eyes, certain the ice had somehow warped his vision. But no, when he opened them again, she was still there, frozen in the most awkward, yet oddly suggestive pose he'd ever seen. The alien beauty was perched in the ice, mid-action as if she had been captured in time, stuck in the middle of an intergalactic self-exploration. And yes, Elliot noticed the implications of this. She wasn't just frozen, she was frozen doing this, hands placed in all the wrong positions, as though she had been caught in the act of, well, he didn't want to think about it too much, but it was hard not to. Elliot shifted uncomfortably. He had come across alien relics, strange artifacts, and even ancient ruins before, but he'd never encountered anything remotely like this. The absurdity of it all gnawed at him, though the strange mix of humor and intrigue was hard to shake. Okay, he muttered to himself. Just breathe. You're a professional. You're here for the loot. You're not here to what? Make her less awkward? He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Right. Let's keep it together. He shifted the tools on his belt, eyeing the crystalline form. There was no way she was just some random alien artifact. That would be too easy. He had learned long ago to expect the unexpected, but even he had to admit, this was beyond what he had signed up for. His first instinct was to cut her free, but the situation screamed trap more than treasure. The frozen position, the delicate way her limbs were suspended in the ice. This wasn't some natural preservation. Someone, or something, had done this on purpose. This wasn't just about a beautiful alien that was locked in place. No, it was a message. And Elliot wasn't sure if the message was something he was supposed to take seriously or if this whole thing was some bizarre prank cooked up by intergalactic tricksters. Either way, there was no turning back now. It wasn't just her appearance that intrigued him. It was the what now that was looming over him like a dark cloud. How was he supposed to react to this? Sure, there was no denying the attraction, but that's what made this whole situation even weirder. There were countless questions bubbling in his head, none of which made sense. Was she alive? Was she dead? He had to assume the latter. The ice around her was pristine. But the longer he stared at her, the more questions piled up. Could she be a kind of living statue, frozen in time for some kind of cosmic purpose? He shuddered. What kind of purpose could that be? A ceremonial ritual? A punishment? And what the hell did this weirdly sexual pose mean? Was this a cosmic joke? Was she just some bizarre artifact, or was she a victim of some alien perversion? He took a step back, his eyes never leaving her. All right. Think this through, Elliot. Think. We've got an alien woman frozen in time, doing this. So what now? He had no clue what the next move should be. It could be dangerous. Hell, it could be embarrassing. What if she thawed out and woke up to find him gaping at her, drooling like some intergalactic pervert? Or worse, what if she thawed out and immediately took offense, freezing him into some weird, twisted version of space ice for the rest of eternity? That was definitely a possibility, given the way his luck had been running. But that wasn't enough to dissuade him. No, Elliot was too desperate for answers and, well, he'd seen weirder things before. Besides, he could always justify it to himself later. Maybe this would be his big break. Okay, he muttered, mentally steeling himself. Let's go for it. What's the worst that could happen? Before he could finish the thought, his hands were already moving, extracting his tools, his focus now entirely on the alien woman. He felt the heat of the situation in his gut, despite the cold. Was it sexual? Sure, but it was more the tension of not knowing what the hell was going to happen. Was she going to wake up mid-rescue and kick his ass? Was she going to pop out of the ice, grab him by the throat, and tell him that he had just interrupted a sacred alien ritual? There was no way to know, but there was also no turning back now. He reached for the icy encasement, each movement filled with uncertainty. With one decisive push, he cracked the ice surrounding her, the sound of shattering crystal echoing in the silence of the room. The alien woman's body shuddered slightly, like a dream trying to wake up, and then, nothing. She remained as she was, locked in the same pose. "All right," he whispered to himself, chuckling nervously. "Okay. It's fine. We're good." His heart thudded in his chest, his pulse racing. He couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of the situation. Of course, this would happen to him. But somehow, the thought of what was to come felt less terrifying and more, well, just plain ridiculous. He leaned in closer to inspect her further, trying to make sense of this strange, awkward moment. Was this what first contact felt like? Was this some cosmic joke, an intergalactic test of human fortitude, or just a setup for his inevitable embarrassment? His eyes flickered between the frozen alien beauty and the now cracked ice. He was standing on the edge of an absurd precipice, unsure of how this strange, awkward moment would end. But one thing was clear, it wasn't just about survival now. It was about making it out of this alive and hopefully, with his dignity intact. Elliot wiped the sweat from his brow, realizing that he was talking to himself now, as if that would make sense of the situation. "What the hell do I do with this?" he muttered, half to himself, half to the frozen alien woman. He was no expert in ancient extraterrestrial cultures, but he was pretty sure this wasn't standard protocol for first contact. He took another step closer, his eyes fixated on her. It felt like a game, like one of those weird, morally questionable choices in an intergalactic dating simulator. But this wasn't a game. This was a real, frozen alien specimen in front of him. And what she was doing, or was caught doing, was, well, problematic, to say the least. Elliot sighed. This wasn't just a find. This was a jackpot, and the worst part? He knew exactly what would happen if he went public with this. The auction houses, the intergalactic researchers, the black market collectors, they'd be all over it. There were probably 1,000 ways to make a small fortune from something like this, but none of them involved admitting what this alien woman was caught doing. He chuckled bitterly. "This is why I don't do hero stuff," he muttered. "I should have just stayed in my lane." Yet here he was, staring at the most ridiculous, awkward, and possibly universe-shattering moment of his life. Hell, no one's ever gonna believe me. The worst part? He kind of wanted to unfreeze her. Not for the reasons most people would think, though. Sure, the idea of having a conversation with an alien woman, especially one who might have been stuck in ice for thousands of years, was intriguing, but no, it was more than that. There was an undeniable curiosity gnawing at him. Would she be mad? Would she be embarrassed? Could he even get her to talk, or was she just a piece of ancient art at this point? "All right, screw it," Elliot muttered. The logical part of his brain screamed at him to leave well enough alone, but his other half, the one that had gotten him into trouble more times than he cared to admit, decided it was time to see just what kind of mess he was getting into. He pulled out the makeshift tool he'd been using for his digs. There was no guarantee it'd work, but if this thing could unfreeze something as ridiculous as a frozen alien beauty in a compromising position, well, that would at least be worth the effort. Plus, who knew? Maybe she'd be able to offer some insights into the mysteries of the universe. Or at the very least, a good story. As he pressed the tool into the ice, the crackling sound reverberated around him. Slowly, the ice began to melt. Slowly, the figure inside started to shift. The hair, which had been frozen in time, began to move. For a moment, Elliot thought he'd done something wrong. But then, her eyes fluttered open. And when she blinked, those alien eyes locked onto his, filled with confusion and a certain laziness. But there was something else there, something that made Elliot feel small in a way he hadn't felt in years. She opened her mouth. Her voice was soft, musical, yet laced with a sharp edge of irritation. What is this?" Elliot, heart pounding in his chest, tried to speak, but the words refused to come out. His brain went completely blank. For a brief moment, he was convinced that she had somehow figured him out, that the jig was up, and he just awoke in some ancient wrath. But then, she blinked again. And then, she chuckled, soft, but amused. "Oh no," she said, looking at the awkward position she'd been frozen in. "Of all the ways to be preserved." Elliot felt his face flush, and not from the cold. Yeah? I wasn't expecting this either. You're human, yes?" Her voice was curious, but her tone was still tinged with that dry humor, as though she had seen it all before. "Yeah," Elliot managed, trying to avoid eye contact with her still perfectly aligned hands. I found you like this. Frozen. And, well, I thought I'd thaw you out. I didn't think you'd be awake already." She raised an eyebrow, her expression unreadable but faintly amused. "Did you think you'd find a helpless damsel in distress?" "Well, yeah," Elliot said, rubbing the back of his neck awkwardly. "That was kinda the plan." She rolled her eyes, her alien eyes glowing faintly in the dim light of the planet's atmosphere. "I should have known. Human expectations. Always so limited." Elliot, still flustered, tried to steer the conversation somewhere, anywhere, less awkward. "So, what exactly happened to you? You know, to get frozen like that?" She sighed, settling back against the ice as it continued to melt away. "It's a long story. A very, very long story," she said, as though she had told it 1,000 times before. "But to sum it up, I was exploring a different dimension and things got complicated." Elliot blinked. "You mean you were, like, stuck in the ice because of some weird cosmic accident?" She smirked. "Not exactly. More like a questionable decision involving a few too many cocktails and a poorly thought-out experiment. Let's just say, time travel and interdimensional exploration aren't as straightforward as some might think." Elliot chuckled, the tension breaking just a little. "Guess that's one way to end up in a predicament like this." He shook his head, realizing that despite the absurdity of the situation, it was also kind of thrilling. There was something undeniably fascinating about her confidence, her humor, her absolute lack of shame. It was all so different from anything he'd ever known. She gave him a wry smile. "You have no idea. But now that I'm awake, I suppose I should thank you, or maybe not. I'm not sure what kind of mess you've gotten yourself into. I think I'm beyond help at this point," Elliot replied, unable to suppress a grin. "So, what's next? You want a drink or, I don't know, a tour of my mess of a life?" Her smile deepened. "Maybe. But first, we need to figure out what you're going to do with a very, very confused alien who owes you a favor." And as they both stood there, him awkwardly, her confidently, Elliot realized that this was just the beginning of a much stranger and much more entertaining adventure than he'd ever expected.